everyone, Vanessa Rufus here. We are in the Live Impact News studio. We thank you so much for joining us here on WCNC Plus tonight. We got a lot of topics to get to over the next couple of hours, but starting off, we want to do a bit more of a deeper dive into a topic that we brought you first last night here on Live Impact News. If you were joining us between that 7 to 9 o'clock hour, you probably caught a lot of the Mooresville Board of Commissioners meeting where there was an agenda item talking about a cat cafe. Now, we wanted to learn a bit more about this, endeavor, if you will, this attempt to bring a cat cafe there to the Davidson area. So we reached out to Amy Doughton, who is one of the people who is behind this push and an effort to try to get the town board to sign off on this. And Amy's actually joining us right now here on Live Impact News. We appreciate your time, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we actually saw the discussion last night. We streamed a lot of it here on Live Impact News, and we see that you were pushing for this what would be called Cat About Town business, where folks can come and they could hang out with cats. They could even adopt a cat. And also, it sounds like in a separate area would be getting food and drink and just kind of hanging out and having a nice time in general. We saw there were a lot of questions from the board, and it sounds like you are kind of in a holding pattern at this point, trying to figure out what steps come next based on the decision that the board made.
That's correct. So we actually started this process with the town of Mooresville back at the end of February. And so it's taken us several months to even get to this point to be able to get in front of the Board of Commissioners. I think what's been so frustrating for us is when we went in front of the planning board actually unanimously recommended that the zoning or that there be a text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance that would allow us to open a cat cafe by right. What that means is we could work directly with the landlord to put the cat cafe in whatever place that we chose to rent. By going against that unanimous recommendation from the planning board and making this contingent or conditional zoning, what the board has done is really made it almost impossible for us to start a business or to start a cat cafe in the town of Mooresville. The process when it's a conditional zoning means we've got to go through this all over again. We've got to submit blueprints, we've got to submit drawings, we have to submit an affidavit by the property owner. Part of the concern that they voiced was that other businesses around us wouldn't like having a cat cafe. Our perspective on that is that's really very discriminatory, as other cafes, coffee shops, restaurants, and so forth do not have to go through this additional process. So for a small business, and to expect a landlord to wait for us to go through this process really makes it almost impossible. And so right now we're regrouping to see what our next steps are. Do we continue trying with the town of Mooresville, or do we try to go elsewhere?
Yeah, this all happening in the town of Mooresville. I brought up Davidson because I think folks might know you from your work in Davidson with cat rescue, and it sounds like this endeavor, Cat About Town, would be related to maybe, the overall messaging of trying to have folks maybe rescue or adopt, not shop, and maybe bring a little bit more of an awareness to cat adoptions, right?
And thank you so much for mentioning that, because you're right. I am co-owner and founder of Cats of Davidson, which is a nonprofit 501c3 cat rescue. We really service Davidson, Mooresville, Cornelius, and Huntersville areas. The reason why the Cat Cafe came about is because oftentimes we'll have cats in rescue that simply age out of the process. Everybody wants to adopt a cute little kitten. Not everybody wants to adopt perhaps a mama that's been spayed but has had multiple kittens, or an older cat, or that's no longer the cute cuddly kitten. And so a cat cafe really gives us the opportunity to increase adoptions, because it gives people the chance in a very relaxed environment to spend time with the cats and get to know them. And so what we've seen across the United States is that cat cafes actually increase adoptions, the adoption percentage. What's so wonderful about that is there are other rescues in the area that have the same issues that we have. And so this really provides us an opportunity to help to improve that, not just with Cats of Davidson, but with other local rescues.
Well, I mean, and I've talked about this before here on WCNC Plus and also on air on WCNC Charlotte. You know, I've done a lot of work with the animal shelter here in Charlotte, and I can tell you usually animals don't present very well in a shelter because it's such a natural environment. It's really stressful, and I mean, it's tough on dogs, and it's really tough on cats from what I understand and have seen. And I think that's really tough for folks to maybe get a good read on whether, for example, a cat is a good fit based on how they behave in a shelter. So I can kind of see maybe why a cat cafe, a little bit more of a relaxed setting, might present better for, you know, a developing relationship with a cat, you know, one-on-one.
That's exactly right. And the wonderful thing about cat cafes is we also have the opportunity to have certain community events. So maybe it's cat yoga or a chess night or a movie night, but it gives people the opportunity then, as you said, to really spend one-on-one time with the cats in multiple different types of environments, multiple different types of events. So they really get to know the cats and make sure that it's a good fit for different families and the personalities of the families, because not all cats are right for all families. And so a little meet and greet that you may spend 10 to 15 minutes with a cat is completely different than having the opportunity to develop a relationship with a cat and make sure it's the right fit for you and your home.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a timely mention here, but, you know, we're in the midst here in August of Clear the Shelters, which is the annual campaign that our station partners with local shelters and rescues around the area to make sure that folks know that adoption is an option and it's a great one and it really will save lives. So I feel like, you know, we should definitely maybe, if we're able to, touch on what you're seeing as far as, you know, your involvement in the rescue community as far as cats are concerned. I mean, I can say, at least from the Charlotte shelter where I volunteer, I mean, we're inundated, and I know we're in cat season, so we get bottle babies this time of year.
Yes.
And yeah, just overflowing, at least from what I'm seeing at Charlotte shelter.
They are overflowing, and what we're seeing across the board with rescues is that they are really struggling because, number one, they're overflowing with animals. And then I think the second challenge of that, of course, with the way that the economy is right now, rescues are starting to struggle with donations and with support. As a 501c3, we don't take salaries. We don't have an income per se. And so we rely strictly on donations. We have been very, very fortunate in that our supporters have been very, very generous. But when you think about different vet bills that rescues have to encounter, even costs like litter and cat food and so forth, it's really difficult. And so rescues are struggling right now. And we see that across the board. We know of several different rescues in our area right now that are coming very close to shutting down because they simply don't have the funds to continue. So I think it's a challenge right now across the board. I also think that as you said, it's important to adopt, not shop. There are so many cats and dogs that are just in desperate need right now. So we would encourage anyone to work with your local rescues.
So, I mean, to go back to, you know, the hurdles, if you will, that you say that you encountered with the push in Mooresville, you felt like it was unfair, you said. Did it seem like it was largely because there would be animals at the property? Where did you feel like maybe the sticking point was?
You know, it's interesting because the commissioners didn't explicitly spell that out. When the commissioners had their preparatory meeting for the meeting that happened last night, they had already made up their mind on which way they would vote. So you can go out and look at that recording. So we knew going in that they were going to recommend something that would make this impossible, but we decided to go in and try to fight it and to make a case. Interestingly enough, the objections that they raised in that pre-meeting were not the objections that were raised at the actual meeting itself. So in the pre-meeting, concerns were raised that a cat cafe would open up the opportunity to have any animal type of a cafe, or that there would be oversaturation in the market. In other words, a cat cafe on every corner, so to speak. So we directly addressed those concerns in our presentation. The conversation turned to being concerned about what other business owners would say or think or feel about having a cat cafe in the area. And so it became more a concern of what our businesses are going to say. Are they going to complain? Should we make this conditional so that we can make sure that all of the other businesses around the cat cafe are agreeable to having a cat cafe. And again, we would say we feel that that is unfair because animal shelters are by right. So you can have an animal shelter and you could have a restaurant or a coffee shop. But in our model, which is a little bit of a hybrid of both, the way the language is written in the zoning, you can't do it. And so for those reasons, we just feel that it was very unfair.
It's interesting because, I mean, I heard you kind of describing the model, if you will, as you just phrased it. And I mean, it sounds like the cats would be there on the property, inside the building. I didn't get a sense that they would be outside at all, roaming around. So I'm just,
No.
I guess curious about that thought process of asking the other businesses. Did they elaborate on that? If the other businesses presumably wouldn't see the cats.
No, as are we. So one of the points that we made was if you wanted to open a vegan restaurant next door to a steakhouse, you wouldn't say to the steakhouse, is it okay if you have a vegan restaurant? And it's very similar. To your point, the cats are really protected inside of a cat cafe. There are regulations under the North Carolina Department of Agriculture that regulate cat cafes. And there are several things. For example, we have to have a separate HVAC system. So the HVAC system in the front where people can actually have coffee and sit down and eat and relax versus where the cats are has to be a completely separate HVAC system. Mm-hmm. You have to have an entry so that when you enter into the cat lounge, you stop and then you enter into the cat lounge via a second door so that the cats can't escape. They can't just roam the premises or go outside. So there's some really specific rules that we have to abide by in order to have a cat cafe under the state of North Carolina.
We also heard last night there were a lot of community members, it seemed, who came and spoke in favor of your, request.
Yes, there were. And we were very, very fortunate in that, both in front of the planning board and in front of the meeting last night, we had community members that signed up to speak. We had people that submitted written comments. When we were in front of the planning board, they actually said to us that this was the first time in 25 years, one of them said, that he had ever had this much public interest and this much public support in any type of petition that they had considered. So we feel very confident that we've got the support of the local community.
Well, I guess, you kind of alluded to what comes next at this point. Do you have a timeline for, any decisions that you might make to see if you want to push forward with this, or if you're, maybe you just think it's not the right time? When do you think you might come to that decision?
We're not really sure, to be honest with you. We're kind of regrouping right now. Last night was a little bit of a blow. We have had people from the town of Huntersville reach out to us, and that certainly is another option for us. So we want to kind of explore that. And, there is always the option to try again with the town of Mooresville. Again, our challenge is that is a multi-month process. So, and it also requires an investment on our part that they could say no to. So like I said, we still have to go and get scale drawings. We have to do a blueprint of there are things that we have to do, and it might be too risky for us. Cat cafes are not a high volume business. We're not doing this because we're going to get wealthy and we expect that the business is going to just make a whole lot of money. That's not what cat cafes are about. Cat cafes are really about fostering community and increasing cat adoption. So to have to invest that kind of money up front with no real idea if the answer is going to be yes or no or not, it makes it a little bit of a barrier to entry for us. So again, we're reconsidering and thinking about what our next steps are.
How can folks, I guess, stay up to date with any decisions that you make? Or, if someone is listening to this right now and they feel like they are very, strongly opinioned on the situation, I mean, how can they make an impact on any decisions that go forward?
So we have a couple of different ways, I think. First of all, we have a Facebook page, Cats of Davidson, as well as an Instagram page. And so certainly they can support us that way or by reaching out directly. I think making their voices known to the town commissioners by writing in, speaking to the planning board, letting the Board of Commissioners of the town of Mooresville know that they support this. It would be very helpful, especially for us, if business owners came out and said, hey, this would be a great thing. It increases tourism, it increases foot traffic, it increases people just coming to visit downtown Mooresville, which they are trying to revitalize. It puts Mooresville on the map because this is something that is completely unique to the Lake Norman area. So I think making those points might help. Again, we're not certain where we're going to go with this, and so I want to make that part clear as well, but we certainly would appreciate any support that we get. If we do decide to reach out to the town of Huntersville, we would have that support that we could take with us and show the town of Huntersville that we're interested there as well.
So, and just to clarify, because you said you have gotten folks from Huntersville reaching out, are those community members or town or leadership, I guess, would you say?
Both. We've had a couple of the commissioners reach out, and then we also had town members reach out. Selfishly and candidly, Mooresville's closer to us. We're actually based in the town of Davidson, so Mooresville is closer than Huntersville is. So that really became our first choice. The planning process, and I do want to make this very clear, the planners that we worked with at the town of Mooresville and the planning board were absolutely phenomenal to work with. They were very helpful. They explained what the zoning laws were in a way that lay people can understand. And so they were amazingly helpful. And I think because of that, it just made it easier to start the process in the town of Mooresville. We have learned a lot. And so I think that is going to make the process easier should we decide to move forward with another location.
Yeah, I mean, seemingly, being a business owner, wanting to start a business, I mean, that's not for the faint of heart, from what I understand. Really, weedy process, if you will, of going through all of the details and
it really is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's not an easy process at all. And I think you have the added complexity that, again, this isn't necessarily a high volume business, and the barriers to entry are also very high. So it's something you really have to have a passion for, you really have to love to do. And I think that we feel that we have made a difference in the lives of animals in our area, and so we want to continue to do that.
Well, we appreciate your time, Amy, joining us
Thank
here on
you.
Live Impact News and sharing your story. And we definitely want to follow along and see how things pan out for you. Make sure you keep us posted. I know you have our contact
Will do.
information, and we have yours. So we'll continue to keep viewers posted here on Live Impact
Thank
News.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.